have Autumn Lubin doing this webinar today. As housing counselors, we see a lot of, and legal service providers, we see a lot of people with a lot of issues. Foreclosure is never anybody's only issue, so we often end up becoming marriage counselors and substance abuse counselors and dealing with some pretty stressful situations that are going on with the homeowners that we're trying to assist. Within all of that, we often forget to take care of ourselves. So we are going to take about 90 minutes today to spend some time talking about how to take care of ourselves. So with no further ado, I want to hand this over to Autumn Lubin.
Thanks, Ellie, and welcome everybody. And as Ellie just said, foreclosure intervention counseling is, I think, some of the hardest work that's done in America. And listening to other people's heartbreaking, often stories, and dealing with all of their stresses along with your own sometimes causes us to push ourselves to the background. And so what we're going to try to do in these next 90 minutes is to show you how to pull yourself back out of the corner and to put some focus where it needs to be, even though that's not your natural inclination to focus on yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this work. And that's why we think it's really important to focus on self-care. So, self-care, here's a cheat sheet that I found on Pinterest, okay? And there's 6 things on how to take care of yourself. You know, one of them is get some rest. Well, that's pretty, clear. We all need to sleep. But the thing is, we all need to sleep well. Fuel your body. We need to eat. And I know there's a lot of you that skip meals, have lunch at your desk, which means you skip meals because somebody walks in or a phone call comes in. Moving it. And so what they're saying is you don't have to go to the gym and exercise, but you do have to move around and go for a walk and take care of your body. And then the other things on here are to be still, to take some quiet moments to yourself each day, to speak up and let people know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and then to enjoy yourself. And those are 6 things to do to take care of yourself. But the question I have is, if self-care is that simple, if it's just these 6 things and all we need is a cheat sheet, what makes it so hard to do? And that's my question to you. And I would like you to just jot in some thoughts into the chat box, and let's see what you think about why it's so hard. What makes self-care so hard? So again, that's on you to just, you tell me what
I'm hearing time.
So for you.
Time.
There's no time for it. We're going to talk about that. Guilt. We're going to talk about that too. Too much to do. Not enough time in the day. Okay? Putting yourself on a back burner, and what it is about us that makes us do that. Because not everybody does that. You know people who don't. You're focused on other people, so you forget yourself. Compulsion to put everybody first. Exactly. Especially caregivers. Yep. Feeling guilty of taking time away from something else. Okay, I'm not seeing a lot of other responses, so I'm just going to move on. We're going to talk about all of those things because I think what happens here is inherent in the people that we are that are drawn to this kind of work. We are the kind of people that are not used to putting ourselves first, and in fact generally put ourselves last. And what I want you to come away with from this webinar is that putting yourself first, taking care of yourself, is a way of being better at taking care of others. And I just want you to think about that for a second. Taking care of yourself is a way of being better at taking care of others. Because the downside is, if you do not take care of yourself, at some point, your body is going to give you up. Whether it's your brain, whether it's your physical, being, at some point it's going to give you up. So self-care is really, really important in this foreclosure intervention work that we're doing. I want to talk a little bit about the science that's behind stress and self-care and what happens to your body when you're not taking care of yourself and when you're under a lot of stress. I'm just going to ask for a raise of hands. Is there anybody on the call that doesn't think that they're under a lot of stress? Is there anybody with a stress-free life? Raise your hand. Seeing none. Okay. Let's move on and talk about the science. So here's what I want you to think about. You're stepping off of a curb in the city, and all of a sudden you look up and there's a car coming at you. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get run over. In that moment, here are the things that happen to your body. Your heart rate increases immediately. Your immune system starts gearing up to be hit by that car. The oxygen-bearing red bloods flood your bloodstream with oxygen and getting it to the right places. Your adrenal glands are going to release adrenaline and cortisol so that your energy in your body is increased. It's going to divert the energy to your muscles, your brain, your heart, and your lungs, because that's where it needs it when you're in danger. Your vision narrows, and your hearing becomes more acute. Your muscles get very, very tense, and your body shuts down that hunger and digestive piece because they don't need that. The body doesn't need that to protect you from this oncoming car. The oncoming car, obviously, is stress, right? And so all of this happens, and you don't have a thing to do about this. This just automatically is hardwired into your body that you step off a curb, you see a car coming at you, and immediately these are the things that your body does. You don't get to choose, because I think our bodies know that if we got to choose, we probably wouldn't do half of these. And so it just does what we have to do. It's called the fight or flight. Okay, so this is fight or flight, but it's basically your body's physiological response to stress that you have no control over. Okay, if you step back onto the curb and get out of the way of the moving car, your body will go back to normal in 20 to 60 minutes. It'll take a little bit of time for all of that to reverse itself, but it will go back to normal. And that's your body's normal reaction to stress. They recognize something that's a danger to you. It does all of those things that we just saw to protect you. And then when you protect yourself and step back out of the way of stress, your body goes back to normal. And so your heart rate slows down, your vision opens up, your hearing's not quite as acute again. All of the things that it did back here will be reversed in the 20 to 60 minutes. Okay? So that's the science of stress. But let me show you what happens when essentially we're not stepping back on the curb. And we step off the curb, and we step off the curb, and we step off the curb. And we put ourselves in front of stress again and again and again and again. Okay? The body's is not designed to deal with ongoing stress like that. And so what happens is it has no opportunity to go back to that normal where your feet are back on the curb. And it is constantly ramping up for that fight or flight mode, and constantly in that state of I have to protect. And so all of those things that we saw on that first slide are going on over and over and over again, and we're never giving our body a moment to step back and go back to a restful, normal place. And so what this causes is exhaustion. I'm going to say a lot of you are tired a lot of the time. It creates edginess. Where you wouldn't normally be edgy, you are edgy because the amount of stress. A lot of times when we are in that stressful mode, we're not making great decisions. Part of that is because when we're in stress, when we're stepping off of that curb in front of that car, we quit breathing. That's why the body is flooding your body with oxygen, because it knows you are going to quit breathing. When you're in a stressful situation, we either quit breathing or don't breathe as well. We breathe a lot more shallowly. And then the oxygen isn't getting to the places in our brains that make decisions. In fact, that's the first place in our brain that shuts down without oxygen, is that decision making. And so all of a sudden we're not making good decisions. So if you've ever wondered why you say stupid stuff when you're mad, it's because you're not breathing and your brain isn't getting that oxygen. So that's a piece of what's happening here. You begin to be run down, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. You are run down. Your body is run down. And what happens to a rundown body is that it leads to illness. And if you're under constant stress, you're probably likely battling colds and stomach aches. And I mean, a lot of times it's not deadly, but you don't ever feel completely well. You have headaches, that sort of thing. So that's the science behind what's going on. And you know, I'm not a science girl. It was literally my least favorite subject in school. I worked hard to take non-science science classes in college. But I think it's really important to understand what happens to your body when it's under this continual stress that I know you all are under. So, stepping off, stepping off, stepping off, stepping off. What we have to know too is that in our brains, neurons that fire together wire together. So if you're constantly under stress, your brain is going to wire those stress neurons together and create these little paths in your brain. And so that every time you're stressed, it builds that path. You know how sometimes you're walking around and you can tell that people are taking a shortcut through the grass because the grass is worn away in a space? That's what's happening to your brain. It's wearing away, and what's going through there then are all of these stress neurons. And they just build on each other, and they make that path wider, and they make that path clearer so that they can just slide right on through. And so every time you're under stress, it's just going along that same little path. And once you have a beautiful little path there, a little shortcut for your brain neurons for that stress, you're going to start feeling anxious, you're going to be depressed, you're going to be hungry, and that becomes your normal state instead of what it ought to be. So now you've given the stress neurons a bypass in your brain to just take off and go. And so now they don't even have to slow down and think about what's going on. The only way to stop that firing together and wiring together then, and this is true science, is joy. Now I know that sounds new agey, but I swear to you it's real science. So while not neurons that fire together wire together, neurons that fire apart wire apart. So what you need is something that's going to go across that path that those stress neurons are creating and disrupt it. And so they have discovered that joy feelings are key to disrupting those neural circuits that your stress in your brain has created. And if you have enough repeated joy, you can destroy those stress neural circuits that are going to actually work and destroy your body bit by bit. So, and we're going to come back to this joy thing at the very end, but I want to put it out there, and I promise you it's true science. I even had my doctor verify this for me. So it's all true. It's absolutely all true. He's got the MD. So what we know about laughter is that it will boost your immune system. If you laugh, you're healthier. It relaxes your muscles. When you are laughing, your muscles can't stay tense. It reduces the stress hormones that your body produces, and instead it creates hormones in your body that that take care of your body. Laughter, joy, creates cardiac exercise. Now, it's not going to replace walking or going to the gym or whatever, but it is cardiac exercise. It reduces pain. So when you're in pain, if you laugh, it doesn't hurt as much, and it reduces your blood pressure. It also cleanses those respiration tracts so that more oxygen can get to your brain so you can make better decisions. All of that is brought to you by joy. So to test all of this, scientists have done all kinds of experiments on rats. This was the cutest rat picture I could find on the web. Some of them were just totally gross. And so what they did was they took these rats and they put them under 5 weeks of continual stress. Now, I don't know what stress is for a rat, but clearly the scientists do. And so they put them under 5 weeks of stress. And what they discovered was that they had seriously impaired immune systems. They were getting sick. And they couldn't solve the problems that they could have solved 5 weeks before. The mazes and the different things that they have them do. They couldn't do that. So then they said, well, what happens if we take away the stress? And within 1 week of taking away the stress, their immune systems and their problem-solving ability began to return to normal. So here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're under stress, constantly under stress, if you remove yourself from stress, then your body does start getting better. And so, A, this is a case for taking that vacation that a lot of you haven't taken in over a year. And B, this is saying to you that if you're under stress and you start removing some of it or find better ways to respond to it, then it's not going to make you sick, and it's not going to affect your ability to think and problem solve and choose your words wisely. And so I just want you to think about that. 5 weeks of continual stress, 1 week off, and they were getting better. So just let that sit there in your head as we go through the rest of this. You had a
Autumn?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I want to interrupt you for a moment. I am getting something from one person saying that the sound is out, so I'm just wondering if anybody else is having that problem. If people can hear, could you just comment in the chat box?
Or raise your hand or something.
Yeah, people are saying that they can hear. Okay. All right, everybody's good. Thanks, Autumn. Sorry, move forward.
Not a problem, Ellie. So you had a self-care reflection document. It had 15 questions on it to just say to you, how do you deal with stuff? And where do you put yourself in all of that? Now, you may or may not have had time to complete this reflection, but what I'm going to ask you is to complete it after the webinar. You really need to, I am not going to ask you to share anything about this because this is just for you. This is just information for you about you. This is a moment for you to stop and think about yourself. Okay? And then what I want to share with you, though, is what the results of the reflection mean. So there are 3 choices for every statement: seldom, often, and almost always. And if you have, of those 15 questions, 3 to 5 of them almost always, or 5 to 7 of them often, or some little combination thereof, I want to tell you that that is a warning that self-care is getting away from you, and that you really need to stop, pause, and think about how you can do better, because you're not going to survive in this work if you don't take care of yourself. That's a fact. Okay. Second one, if you had 6 to 9 almost always, or 8 to 11 often, or a combination in there, you're in a crisis of self-care. You're not taking care of yourself. And you're hanging on by a thread. And I want you to recognize that this is a really important thing to know, because at some point it's going to break. And there's no way of knowing how that's going to break. I've had foreclosure intervention counselors melt down on clients. I've got one foreclosure intervention counselor here in Minnesota that has melted down in 3 different agencies on clients 3 different times, been fired 3 different times, and is now at her 4th agency because she lives, breathes, and sleeps and eats foreclosure intervention. She hasn't had a vacation in over 10 years. So, I mean, I've seen what this work does to people. I've also seen people who manage it well. I just was fortunate enough to do a workshop recently here in Minnesota, and there is a foreclosure intervention counselor that has been doing this since 1992. 1992, y'all. One of the happiest, relaxed people I know, because she takes time to have a life outside of work and to do the things that allow her to take care of herself. She's got 3 kids. She now is a grandma. I mean, her kids were involved in all kinds of activities. And what she would tell you, and what she said in this workshop that I was doing a couple weeks ago, was it wasn't a matter of finding time. It was a matter of taking time and just doing it. And she is a self-care warrior. And I wish I could travel around the country with her in my back pocket, because she has managed to continue to do this work well and still have a life and take care of herself outside of it. The last one is what I call an overcaring illness. If you've got more than 10 almost always, or more than 12 often, or a combination, it's truly an illness, y'all. And you need to stop and say, holy buckets, what can I do to take better care of myself, because this is going to kill me in one form or fashion. And here's what I know about y'all. Nobody else knows. Nobody else knows that you're in trouble. I mean, the quote there, you can't tell how much suffering is on a face that's always smiling, and that's y'all. You don't put this out there, at least not to very many people. And so one of the things we're going to talk about today is how you can put that out there in a way that keeps you from being shatteringly vulnerable, and yet allows you to tell the people around you that care, hey, I'm in trouble. I need to do something here. Okay, so you'll have this PowerPoint. You can go back and do your self-care reflection if you haven't done it. You can look at this results slide, and you can start thinking about it in a way that you're going to be taking care of yourself. Because the only way you can continue to take care of other people is you do something about this. You have to do something about this. So what are some strategies to take care of yourself? I've got some quotes here that I just want to share with you. Sometimes you don't realize you're actually drowning when you're trying to be everyone else's anchor. How you treat yourself is how you're inviting the world to treat you. Think about that for a minute. Taking good care of you means the people in your life will receive the best of you rather than what's left of you. I've come to believe that caring for myself is not self-indulgent. Caring for myself is an act of survival. And then if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. I want you to think about some of those. And again, you're going to have the PowerPoint to go back to, because these are all true statements. So some strategies. First, you have to decide and choose to take care of yourself and say, I am going to do this. I am going to do this. because you're the only one that can. And so you have to just say, I choose me. I choose me. Because if I don't choose me, I don't get to choose anybody else. You have to know what really matters in your life, because a lot of times the stress that's coming at you might not be from anything that matters. And so we have to look at ways to eliminate, and we'll talk about that. We need to learn to say no. And I'm going to ask you all to raise your hand. Who is good at saying no? Who is good at saying no? So we got a few of you. Okay, that's great. That's great. The rest of you, let's work on this. And so we'll be taking a look at that too. How do you say no? Because it's not that you often don't want to say no, you just don't know how to say no. And so we're going to talk about how you say no. We don't have time in a 90-minute webinar to spend a lot of time on assertiveness, but I just want to give you some highlights of assertiveness so that you can start thinking about this and challenging yourself to be assertive when you might often choose other ways of being. Also, I'm going to give you some ways to approach others that are creating stress. How do you deal with them? What kind of things do you do to eliminate or reduce that stress? And then we're going to talk about laughing. We're going to talk about joy. So, first one is choosing to take care of yourself. And choosing to take care of yourself is a matter of personal integrity. It's not fair to others when you don't take care of yourself, because when you don't take care of yourself, you're irritable, you're edgy, you're tired. You don't bring all of you to life. And the people that love you and care about you, you owe them that. They owe you that. It is a personal integrity moment to take care of yourself. Now, I am challenging you to think about this self-care thing in a whole different way than you've been thinking about it. But I am a firm believer that it is on you to take care of you. And that personal integrity, you cannot be a person of integrity if you're not taking care of yourself. And so there's a couple quotes here. Taking care of myself is not a right, it's my responsibility. Look at the picture over there. Because I take care of myself first, I can take care of others even better. And here's what I want to say to you. When you take care of yourself, when you clearly are taking care of yourself and setting boundaries around you, you are teaching others to take care of themselves too. Your children watch. The other people in your world watch what you do. They hear what you say. Even those teenagers that you think have earplugs, invisible earplugs in their ears that you don't think hear a word that you're saying or focus on anything but themselves, are watching and listening. Believe me, I've got 6 kids. The youngest one's 33. They watched and they listened, and we get to see it in them as adults. Okay? And the deal is that you got to take care of yourself, and other people have to take care of themselves, and then that way there's healthy relationships that can be built. So there are some dirty rumors, and you all came up with, I think, every single one of them at the very beginning of this, about self-care. The first one is, it's selfish. I can't put myself first. That's selfish, and I'm not a selfish person. Well, let's look at that. Self-care is not selfish. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. If there's nothing in you to give to others, what are you giving to others? Emptiness. That's what you're giving to others. Self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put here, that I was put here on earth to offer to others. If you've ever read anything by Parker Palmer, you know that this guy is brilliant and clear. I would highly recommend you go take a look at some of his books. He's got No, I'm not going to remember the name of it, so I'm not going to tell you, but it's a little book, and it's really, really good. It's not a selfish act. It's good stewardship. And taking care of myself doesn't mean me first. It means me too. It means me too. When I was a single parent for 11 years, and when my son was very, very young and old enough to understand any sense of time, so when he was like a toddler, I would pick him up. I'd come home from work. I'd pick him up from daycare, and we'd drive home. And he knew that when we walked in the door, Mommy got 15 minutes. And I would set the timer on my microwave for 15 minutes. And he knew that he had to entertain himself for 15 minutes. And that's not much to ask of a 2 or 3-year-old if you give him the right toys and tools to play with, and you make it part of your every single day. I got 15 minutes so that I could transition from being the worker bee, from being the commuter, from dealing with all the stress of the work and all the stress of the commuting. I needed 15 minutes to just not talk, not be, not do, just come back to myself so I could deliver myself to him for the rest of the evening and be everything he needed me to be. It worked. Now I'm going to tell you, if it works with a 2-year-old, you can make it work with anybody. 15 minutes. It's all I needed. 15 minutes. That's all it takes, y'all. You've got to start thinking about building these in. So there's a busted to that first rumor. Let's look at number 2. I don't have time. Some of you said this. I just don't have time. Well, A, I just told you it takes 15 minutes, right? Or 10 minutes. It doesn't take that much time. But you need that time for yourself. You need that time to regroup and let your brain come down from the stress. Let your brain start to go back to normal a little bit. Because what happens if you don't make that time? You have time. You just need to make that time. You will burn out. You will absolutely burn out. Now, you might not melt down on clients and scream at them and tell them they're idiots, but you're going to burn out in one form or fashion. You're going to find yourself not caring anymore. I don't care about this file. I don't care about this family. It's just something I got to do to get through this day. If you're at that place, you're at burnout. The Dalai Lama, y'all, talked about burnout. He said, in dealing with those who are undergoing great suffering, and that would be y'all dealing with your families that are in foreclosure intervention counseling, if you feel burnout setting in, if you feel demoralized and exhausted, it is best, for the sake of everyone, not you, but everyone, to withdraw and restore yourself. The point is to have a long-term perspective. It's not just about today. It's about tomorrow and next month and next year and who you want to be then. You have time for self-care. The Dalai Lama says you need to take it. And so another rumor busted. I have to do it alone. Self-care means I have to be alone. That's another one that people say, and I don't want to do it alone. You don't have to. You're not in this alone. There are people who care about you that would be happy to help you do some of this self-care. You've got a friend or a relative or a neighbor that would love to go on a walk with you and not share their burdens, but listen to yours. Or listen to yours and then you listen to them, and it's a give and take. But it's not where you're doing all of the listening all of the time, which is what you're doing at work, and I'm going to bet it's what you do with most of your other relationships. You're not in it alone. You don't have to do it by yourself. And so a little humor is always good. There could be a buddy system. I really encourage people, I do workshops on self-care, and I really encourage people to find a self-care buddy. And in my workshops, we pair up. so that even leaving the workshop, even if it was somebody who was a stranger when you walked in the door that morning, you walk out with a self-care buddy who's going to check up on you, and you're going to check up on them, and you're going to give each other ideas about how to manage something or take better care of yourself, and you're just going buddy up and help each other take care of themselves. You don't have to go it alone. So another rumor, busted. So let's jump into knowing what really matters. How different our lives are when we really know what is deeply important to us. Think about what's deeply important. And keeping that picture in mind, we manage ourselves each day to be and to do what really matters most. Now, y'all know Stephen Covey. He's written 100 different books on how to be an effective person in all aspects of your life. But how different would your life be if you stayed focused on what really mattered and kept that at the center of your head all day long? Okay? So let's take a look at this. And what I want to say to you is, and my poor son, he just grimaces every time he meets somebody that's been in one of my workshops or classes, because he knows that I tell stories about him all of the time. And when he was 5 and in kindergarten, and I had a boss who had a stay-at-home wife and had 3 kids, he didn't understand why all of a sudden my kid's in kindergarten and I'm showing up as a manager late, 15 minutes every single day since school has started. And he's starting to have little chit-chats with me. And the issue is I'd get up, I'd get my son ready, I'd get him dressed, I'd get him his little bowl of oatmeal, plop him in front of the TV like a bad mom, and then I'd go get ready. I come back out, he'd be naked, totally stark, raving, naked. And that's why I was always late, because then I had to fight with him to get him redressed. Well, one morning, about 3 weeks into this, I just looked at him and I just said, you know, Patrick, you're 5, you're old enough to go to school, you're old enough to stay home by yourself, and I got to go to work. I'm tired of getting yelled at. I'm going to work, and I will see you later. And I walked out my apartment door. Now, was I leaving a 5-year-old alone all day? No, but he didn't know that. I just needed to walk away from him. Well, he comes running out in the hallway of my apartment complex in all of his glorious nakedness, screaming at the top of his lungs, Mommy, please don't leave me alone. I promise I'll put my clothes on. So now I got neighbor problems. So I get him dressed, take him to school, and that afternoon I get a call from his kindergarten teacher who says, can you stop by on your way home? I'll wait. Can you stop by so that we can chat? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he took all his clothes off at school. And so I go by the school, and the teacher begins to tell me that she's got 4 little boys in her class that these kids have been in preschool together since they were 2. And so it's like having 4 siblings. And she said, and what one does, 4 do. And today, for instance, we were watching a movie, and instead of sitting at the table like everybody else, these 4 were under the table acting it out. And she said, I really wouldn't be very concerned about that because they are 5, but I think one of them has a learning disability, and I need them at the table. And so she said, I've decided that if I can turn 1, I can turn 4. And I've decided we're going to try to turn Patrick, and we're going to teach him to be a good leader. Now, I nearly fell off that little itty-bitty chair I was sitting on, because all I was thinking was, well, if you could just teach him to keep his clothes on, I'd be a really happy woman. And so she gave me stuff to do with him at home and gave me stuff for the preschool teacher to do because he was only in half day. And there was stuff that she was going to do. And all year long, we worked on teaching Patrick to be a good leader. And so when I dropped him off at school every single morning, my last words to him were, I love you, have a good day, and remember, be a good leader. And he looked at me one day getting out of the car, and he said, you know, Mom, and he was tapping his forehead, this good leader stuff is really, really hard. I have to keep it right here in the front of my head all day long. Well, I'm going to tell you, if a 5-year-old can figure this out, if they can figure out that kind of behavior modification about keeping it right in front of your head all day long, we can do this. And the reason he wouldn't stay dressed is my ex had bought him red and black cowboy boots, and none of the school clothes I had bought him matched the cowboy boots. So that night we went shopping. So that's just my way of saying Keep it in the front of your forehead. Because once you know what really matters, it's really easy to make decisions. Have you made a list? We've made all kinds of lists in our lifetime, but have you ever made a list of what matters most to you? Because if you want to simplify, and that's what a lot of self-care is, you need to focus on what matters most. And so now you get to do a little activity. So I'm going to show you. There we go. Here is a list of 18 different things that might matter to you. They matter to a lot of people. And so what I want you to do is take a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down 8 of them that matter most to you. So go ahead and take a minute and write down all 8 of them that matter most. Okay, now, of those 8, I want you to reduce it to 5. So take out 3 of the 8 that you have listed. Get down to the 5 things that matter most. I know you're groaning. You might not be doing it out loud, but you're groaning. I'm going to make it worse. Reduce it to 3. Get down to the 3 things that matter most. Now you're ready to start making some decisions. Now you know what matters most to you. So one of the first things I want to teach you is about no.
Autumn?
Yes,
I'm going to interrupt you again because I just got a message from Becky that we may be losing audio.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if everybody is hearing again. So if we could get people to kind of, so again, I'm getting people who are saying they can hear. I'd also, well, somebody said choppy. The computer, somebody did say the computer went out and they went to telephone. So if people are having trouble hearing on the computer, you may want to go to the call-in number, and that may help you. Okay. Thanks, Autumn.
It sucks when technology doesn't work for this. I'm sorry that you all are having those problems. So N-O, period. Complete sentence. Doesn't have to be anything other than no. And it doesn't have to be rude. It just has to be no. And so here's something I want you to think about. Every time you say yes, you are saying no to something else because you can't spend your time twice. So when you say yes to taking files home or working at home, you're saying no to your family. Whenever you say yes, no matter what the yes is, it's no to something else because you can only spend your time once. So how do you get good at saying no? Is anybody good at saying no? If you're good at saying no, raise your hand. Okay, some of the same people that are better at taking care of themselves too. All right, so let's look at some ways to say no. Practice, 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 practice. Your mom told you this, your dad told you this, somebody told you this in school. Practice makes perfect. It's the truth. A lot of you, though, saying no is so antithetical to who you are that it's really hard to say. So I'm going to say start practicing somewhere where it does not matter. Practice, walk into a store, any store that has clerks that are walking around. Wait for one of them to come up to you and say, "Can I help you?" and look at them and say, "No." There's a place to start. Work on places where it doesn't have great impact, to get used to saying the word without apologizing. "Oh, I'm sorry, no, there's nothing to help me. I'm just killing some time." No, all you got to do is say no, no, and smile. It's not rude. Repetition. Everybody's got those people in their lives that are constantly asking for something, whether it's help, whether it's a cup of sugar, to borrow a tool, to do their work, whatever it is. There is somebody out there that is repeatedly asking you to do something. Repeatedly say no. I have a colleague who lives in Boston, and we were having a conversation about having family members live with you because we had one of our grown children live with us last year, and it ultimately didn't go well. And she said, "Yeah," she said, "I've had all of that." And she's from a different country, and she said, "And so my relatives come over and want to stay with us while they get settled." And she said, "And I've just learned to say no, because in the end I'm going to be the bad guy anyway, and they're not going to be happy with me. And so I'm just going to say no at the beginning so that we don't have to go through any of that heartache." And she said, "I just say no. And yeah, they get mad at me, but they were going to get mad at me anyway, and I don't have to go through all of that." Just keep repeating no. Preempt those people that are constantly coming to you and asking for things and saying, "Oh, I see that gleam in your eye. I don't have time." Preempt them. Don't even let them ask. Or tell them, "Let me get back to you." Sometimes it's easier, especially when you're getting used to saying no, is to say, "Let me get back to you," and then shoot them an email or a text to say, "I really don't have time." Or you can say to them, "Maybe another time, maybe later. I could maybe do that later, but not now." Or, "It's not you. It's not that I don't want to spend time with you. It's me. I need to spend time with me." Okay? And so there are some ways to start. There's all kinds of information out on the web about this, how to say no. Now we're going to start talking a little bit about assertiveness. "Then you should say what you mean," the March Hare went on. "I do," Alice hastily replied. "At least I mean what I say, and that's the same thing, you know." "Not the same thing a bit," said the Hatter. "Well, you might just as well say that I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see." So how we say what we say makes a difference. So when you're looking at being assertive, now assertive is not aggressive light, and that's what a lot of people think. That if you're assertive, you're just kind of being mean, and that's not what assertiveness is. Assertiveness is being honest with yourself and being honest with the other people. And sometimes that's hard to do, but it is truly just being honest about things. You need to learn how to express your feelings. If you're not good at this, it doesn't happen overnight. And again, there's those words again: practice, practice, practice. Practice with somebody who's safe, and then you'll get better at it. I started practicing this about 25 years ago, about saying what I wanted or how I felt. And I was amazed at the reaction of others. I often was heard. That surprised me. I thought people would be defensive. I thought people would get mad at me, and the honest answer is they didn't. They really didn't. Now, you can't just come out and be belligerent, but you can say, "I need this." When my husband and I first got married 20 years ago, he had been single for a long time, and he had a habit of just walking out the front door and leaving, and not telling me he was leaving and not telling me where he was going. And it wasn't that I was checking up on him. It was just that if I wanted to find him, I didn't know where he was. If I needed him to help me with something, I didn't know where he was. And so we had to have a discussion of I need you to tell me when you're leaving and where you're going so I just know. He's like, oh, okay. The conversation was that simple, but I'm telling you, it took me weeks to get to the point of saying that to him. We have to respect other people's feelings and needs. So we have to understand that they have feelings and needs. And we need to be appropriately direct. Now, I didn't say to my husband, it makes me so mad when you just disappear. I'm going to be honest, I thought that. But that's not what I said to him. What I said to him was, when you leave without telling me, I don't know where you are. And so we need to be appropriately direct, but not sarcastic, not belligerent, but honest. And we have to clarify our own needs. People are not mind readers. Say it again. People are not mind readers. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't always know what you're feeling. That doesn't mean they're bad. It means they're not a mind reader. Let that be and speak up. Say what you need. If they say, I can't do that, then you have another conversation to be had. You can learn how to be assertive. You really can learn how to do this. It will change your whole world. And it also reduces interpersonal conflict. I started practicing this because I had a person that I worked with who was really good at this. And I saw how she minimized all kinds of conflict in her world just by being assertive. And it was her modeling it, her doing it, that made me go, oh my gosh, that's what I need to do, because then you're not in conflict with people all the time. This is all I got on assertiveness because it's a big topic. We could spend a week on it. But I really want to encourage you to go and if this is an issue, to read some stuff. There's so much stuff out there on all of this. I really want to encourage you to take some time. The next one is leaving work at work. The first picture is a tree. And there's a story about a man in a worry tree. And it kind of goes like this. A man needed some work done on his house. The man who was going to do the work, his truck broke down the morning he was to come over and do the work, and he called the man that needed the work done and said, I don't have transportation, I can't be there today. And the gentleman said, well, I'll come get you. Not a big deal, I'll come get you. So he went and he got him, and while he was waiting in his truck in the driveway for the other gentleman to come out of his house, he noticed when he came out, he walked over to the tree and he rubbed the leaf. And then he came over and he got in the truck. And when he brought him back that evening, he got out of the truck, went over to the tree, rubbed the leaf again, and went back in the house. So this went on for 2 or 3 days, 4 days. And finally, the gentleman that was doing the driving said to the other one, okay, I just got to ask, what's the deal with the tree? And he said, oh, that's my worry tree. When I come home from work at night, I walk over and I rub the worry tree, and I leave all of my work worries with the tree. And that way when I go into my family, into my house, I can be all there for them. And he said, and then when I come out in the morning, I walk over the tree, pick up my worries for work, and go to work. Great idea. I had a student that I told that story to, and she said, well, I don't have a tree. But she said, I have a skeleton key. And so what she would do at the end of the day was she had a skeleton key. And when she came in the morning, it hung on a hook by her door, and she'd pick it up and put it over by her computer. And that was her coming in and picking up the work. And when she was done at the end of the day, she picked up the key and she put it on the hook, and that was her way of saying, I'm done. Everybody can have that sort of method of leaving work at work. If you need that tangible way of saying I'm leaving work at work, there it is. Another way of doing it is to sit at the end of each day and make a list of all the things that you need to do tomorrow, get it down on paper, and leave it there. And that way you're not worrying, while you're fixing dinner or putting kids to bed. You're focused on fixing dinner or putting kids to bed, and not, I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to do this. It is confirmed fact that if you put things down on paper and get it out of your brain, it leaves. Confirmed fact. Again, I'm not a scientist, but that's confirmed. The other way to leave work at work is on your commute home, and have like a halfway spot between work and your home. And so while you're getting to that halfway spot, that's where you're going over all the things that happened today and the things that need to happen tomorrow, and you're just kind of working it all out, whatever stressed you out that day, whatever made you mad, you're working it all out. And then when you get to the halfway spot, you start thinking about home and what's next at home and who's waiting for you at home. There's different ways to leave work at work, but it is seriously important that it stay there, because it's not part of your home. There's not work at home. Okay, so there are different ways to avoid or to approach stress. There are 4. And the first one we're going to talk about is avoiding. Because sometimes you can just avoid stress. And so you need to take control of your surroundings. If something stresses you, for instance, if messiness or clutter stresses you, remove it from your area. Remove it from your workspace. If it's messiness that's collective messiness within your organization, say, hey, is it okay if I organize these files, so that you can take control of all that, so it's not stressing you out. These are little stressors, but those little stressors build up. Avoid contact with whatever stresses you out. I had a staff person who was a morning person. I'm not. I'm not even close to what you would call a morning person. And every morning I walked in, and his very cheerful face, no matter what he was doing in his cubicle, would come out and it would say, "Good morning, Autumn, and how are you today?" It drove me out of my mind. And so I learned to go a different way to my office, that I didn't have to pass by his cube and be assaulted by morning cheerfulness. Now, for some of you, that's not a big deal, but for me, it was a daybreaker. And so the days that I could avoid his cube and avoid that overly cheerfulness first thing in the morning, I could start my day out the way I needed to start my day. And then I could go say, well, good morning, Hal. How are you? I could do it then. I just couldn't do it first thing. Say no. We've already talked about that. Turn off the news. Get off social media. Take a break from all of that. It's one of the best ways to avoid stress. When you go on vacation, don't take your computer. Don't take it. Take a week off of Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is that you happen to be on all of the time. Just take a break. It does stress you, you just don't realize how much. And then for those of you who are to-do list makers, get rid of part of your list. There are some things on that list. Just look at them. And if you don't do them, the only person who knows you didn't do it is you. Scratch it off the list. Get rid of it. That's something that just doesn't need to be done. So that's avoiding. You can also alter the way you approach stress and the people who stress you. You can ask them to change their behavior. This is an assertiveness thing. And there are ways to do it. You don't have to be rude about it. You can just say, I would really appreciate you not having your music so loud, because it makes it difficult for me to think. Okay? You don't go over to them and say, would you turn down your radio? Because then that way you're giving them options and you're giving them some control. And then be willing to respond when they ask for changes in your behavior. Communicate your feelings openly. Say it makes it really difficult for me to be able to concentrate with music that's that loud. I get that you need to listen to your music. Some people do. I don't. And so let's see if we can't find a balance here. Take that risk to go say something instead of sitting there and simmering and boiling over. Manage your time better. One of the things that stresses us out, one of the reasons we think we don't have time, is that we might not manage our time as well as we could. For instance, in your counseling appointments, if they're going more, well, you guys being in New York, your appointments are always going to be more than an hour, but minimize the amount of time that you talk about things that don't matter in that appointment, and that you let your clients talk about things that don't matter. That the lender is being a butt? Yeah, but let's not spend time on it. Let's acknowledge it. Yep, they are, and let's move on. So manage your time better. Get rid of stuff. Get rid of stuff. I tell you, we took 15 loads to Goodwill last summer. It was the best thing I've ever done in my life. Well, maybe having my son and getting married. But it was such a sense of cleansing. Get rid of it. Organize what you do have. And then say to people, you know, this is my limit. I only have 5 minutes. For the person who comes and asks all the questions or always has the story to tell at work, I only have 5 minutes, but I'm happy to listen for 5 minutes. And then at the end of 5 minutes say, oh, I need to get back to work now. All of that's okay. All of that's okay. The other two are increasing your tolerance approaches. So you need to accept some of the stress. Talk with them. Forgive people. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. Forgive them and just say, I'm not carrying that little burden around with me. Smile. Makes you feel better. It does, I promise. Now, this is where it gets a little new agey. Practice positive self-talk. And I'm going to say that it gets a little new agey, but I am going to tell you, y'all, you do negative self-talk without even thinking about it. And so turn it around and do positive self-talk. See stress as an opportunity, as a problem-solving moment. That's always my mantra. If you see over here in ADAPT, it says adopt a mantra. My mantra is, well, it's just another opportunity to problem solve. You know, that's always my mantra. And so see it as an opportunity. And then over here with adapting, adjust your standards. If you're a new parent and you have little kids, your house is not going to be clean like it was before. Just accept it. It's just not going to be there. And children don't die if you have a little bit of dust on something. They really don't. Practice thought stopping. Sometimes we get into this place where we're thinking about something, and it's negative and it's wearing us out, and we don't say, oh, stop. Just stop that. I used to have nightmares, and my husband taught me that you can wake yourself up from nightmares if you go to sleep thinking, it's only a dream, and I'm going to wake myself up when it happens. It really does work. It stopped the nightmare. You can stop thinking about something. And I always say have instead of thinking. So if you find yourself ruminating on something and spinning on it, have something that you're going to think of instead of. So something that gives you hope, something that makes you feel better about you and the universe. Have that thing at ready so that when you find yourself stuck in that rut of thinking, that you have something to pull yourself out with. Reframe what the situation is. Okay, so I don't like you and you don't like me, but we have to work together. Go ahead and accept the fact that someone doesn't like you and you don't like them, and be okay. I'm not saying that you have to say that to them, but then just reframe how you're going to work with them. If this is the truth, and this is the truth, that we don't like each other, how are we going? We still have to get along. How am I going to do that? Adopt your mantra. Create a gratitude list. I'm telling you, that really changes things. Every time I start feeling stressed out, I've got a picture list, but it's a picture of all the things that I'm grateful for on a regular basis. And, you know, just stopping and thinking why I'm grateful for them takes me to a whole different place. Use humor and imagination. Laugh at yourself, and then look at the big picture. Look at the big picture. It's the long run that matters. One joy scatters 100 griefs. Do you see these kids laughing? Even the hamster and the cat? Okay? Even the cat is laughing. Okay? So here's my question for you. And this is a poll. So I'm going to open that poll. Children laugh 400 times a day. How many times do you think adults laugh in a day? And there's the poll. Go ahead and choose. Okay, most of you have voted. And let's see. 55% said 10 times. 26% said 15 times. 13% said 35 times. And 6% said 50 times. Well, the answer is 15 times. And so, I mean, some of you were a little more pessimistic than that and said 10 times. And 400 times a day, children laugh. Do you suppose children are a little more healthy than we are when it comes to managing things like stress? They laugh. Find things to laugh at. So we're going to talk about that. Let me close that poll and move on to some other information. Oops, there it is. So how do you find joy? Learn what makes you laugh and do it more often. Do you know what makes you laugh? I had a question when I was interviewing people for positions. One of my questions, and it almost always caught people off guard, is what makes you happy? What makes you happy? And so if you learn what makes you happy, then do that and do it some more. But find what makes you laugh and what makes you happy. If you don't know, or you know, people that are depressed, and I'm telling you this burnout thing leads there, you know, just start doing something like read the comics every day. That's something everybody can do for free. Read the comics every single day. There is going to be something in there that makes you laugh. I used to keep Far Side books and Calvin and Hobbes in my office for my staff, so that when they were having one of those moments, they could come in and get the book. They could sit in my office, they could take it to theirs, they could go outside, but I didn't care. But just, you know, get yourself back to yourself so that you can keep doing your work. So find something that makes you laugh, be able to tap into it at any moment, and do that. Surround yourself with joyful and happy people. It has been proven that if you put a bunch of people that are unhappy together and stick a happy person in with those unhappy people, pretty soon the happy person's unhappy. Misery does love company, and it will make all the company miserable. So find the people that make you laugh. Find the people that are joyful. Actually, I've been doing it more than once a year recently, but it started out as a party, an anti-cookie bake, because I don't bake cookies, and it was at Christmas time, and the only women I invited to it were women who made me laugh. That was the one criteria. The only way you got an invitation was if you made me laugh. And so I call them my wild angels, and we get together. We're getting together about 2 or 3 times a year now, but it's only people who make me laugh. And I've got some friends who don't get invited to that party. And I decided not to feel bad about that, because I needed to surround myself with people who made me happy and made me laugh and gave me some joy. I owed that to my family and all the other people around me to be able to surround myself with people like that. So think about having your own Wild Angels party. Develop a sense of humor. If you don't have one, you can get one. Learn how to have that sense of humor, to find the humor in things. Let go of all of the seriousness. It's not all serious. It isn't. And here's a big one. Learn to laugh at yourself. You will notice that the people that can laugh at themselves are people who are very confident about who they are. And so get confident about who you are, and then learn to laugh at yourself. When you make a mistake, you know, and other people see it, you know, don't get embarrassed. Learn to laugh at yourself. Say, oh, I made a mistake. I'm human, right? Let me try that again, and move on. Don't dwell on it. So learn to laugh at yourself. We're almost to the end here. Henry David Thoreau said, as a single step will not make a path on the earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. I swear this man was brilliant. One of these days, I don't know, I'd never last for a year without other people. But what he's saying here is you can't just think this once and say, at the end of this, say, oh, I'm going to do self-care. I'm going to take better care of myself. And then have it magically happen. You're going to have to choose it. You're going to have to do it. You're going to have to fail at it and then do it some more and get back up. You need to find the joy. Surround yourself with those people. Be clear about what you want and what you need and speak that and be honest. You need to do all of this every day. Self-care is not something that you do. It's something that you live. It's something that becomes who you are. And I promise you that if you start working on this, and it takes time, y'all. I mean, I told you I've been working on this for 25 years and I still fall. I still fall. I landed in the hospital last year in the fall, really sick. They didn't even know what was wrong with me for 3 days, but really sick. And I know why I landed there. Remember I told you we had the adult child living with us and their kids? And I was not taking care of myself because I was very focused on taking care of them and dealing with them. They were a family in crisis, and I really let myself get too involved in that. 25 years I've been working on this self-care thing, and it took one thing to just suck me in and take me all the way back to 26 years ago. And I landed in the hospital. And I'm telling you, landing in the hospital, not knowing what's wrong with you, when scary words are being thrown around every hospital room you're in, and you know, you're laying there at night, and if you've ever been in a hospital, you know the nights are the longest. You're laying there at night wondering, oh my gosh, is this it? And this is where what really matters came back into focus for me. And it was like, oh my gosh, what really matters is this and this and this, not any of those things that made me so sick to be in here. You know? And so, I mean, I had pneumonia and I had a variety of other things. None of that was, you know, was not caused by what I was not dealing with, but it was contributing to that, and it allowed me to get sick and stay sick. And so I'm going to say to you that what matters most becomes clearest when you don't think what matters most is going to be yours for much longer. And so make that list. Know what matters most. Know how to build your life around that. And know how to protect that from the stress. And know that you're going to falter, that you're not always going to do it right. But what you're going to learn is that when you realize that you've faltered, you jump back much more quickly. So, how would your life, I want you to think about this, maybe jot a note down or two. I want you to think about this continually for the next couple of days, if you can. Write it down on a sticky note and stick it on your desk or your computer screen where you're going to be seeing it. How would my life be different if I took better care of myself? I can give you all of this information about self-care. We just did it. And there's tons more out there. I mean, there's even self-care apps, y'all. I mean, there's tons of information out there on the internet and in books that you can learn about self-care. But it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have about self-care if you don't do it. It's a verb. You have to do self-care. You have to be self-care. You have to live self-care. So how would your life be different if you took better care of yourself? I want you to let that ruminate around with you for a little bit. And start letting it seep in. Put it in the front of your head. You know, pat your forehead and say, oh yeah, how would that be different? How would it be different if I took care of myself right this minute? If I was assertive right this minute and took care of myself, how would this be different? Go ahead and let it seep into your head. And so I've got another poll for you, and my question, it's a two-piece poll. How are you going to take better care of yourself? So let me open a poll. There are your first choices. Here we go. It's open. So are you going to get better sleep, more sleep? Are you going to have better eating habits? Are you going to take 10 minutes to just breathe? And are you going to breathe when you start feeling stressed? Just take those 3 deep breaths for a second. Are you going to exercise? You know, and exercise, again, doesn't mean going to the gym. Exercise can be walking a dog. Exercise can be going out and swinging. You know, kids have got the answers to this. Just watch what they do. Go jump on a trampoline. I'll tell you what, go jump on a trampoline. You'll feel so much better. Just make sure it's got the big net around it so you don't fall off. Because we don't bounce back as adults the way kids do. Okay, so a third of you say you're going to exercise. 22% of you say you're going to breathe. I'm so glad to hear that. It's such an easy thing to do, but if you just take those 3 deep breaths and let the oxygen get to your brain, it really will eliminate a lot of apologies you have to make through life. 17% say they're going to take 10 minutes and get more sleep, and 9% of you say you're going to have better eating habits. Okay, I can go with that. So now I'm going to close that one, and then I've got another list of 5 things to do to take better care of yourself. So I'm going to open that and take a look at it. So it's start saying no, to laugh more, to change how you approach stress, to leave it at work, and focus on what matters. Okay, so I'm so happy to see this. 50% of you say you're going to focus on what matters. And I'll tell you, if you don't do anything else, that's the one that'll force you to do some of these others just in focusing on that. 19% say you're going to laugh more. 12% say you're going to start saying no and change your approach to how you come to stress. And 8% of you are going to leave it at work. I'd love to know if that means that you're already leaving it at work or you know you can't leave it at work. But I'm going to be in New York next week, and so we can talk about that because leaving it at work is an important thing. But I love the 50% of you that are going to focus on what matters. That really says it all. Okay. Y'all know how to get a hold of me, and if you don't, Ellie knows how to get a hold of me, and if you have any questions. What I'd like to do is to just throw this open to questions at this point or comments about all of this, and if there's any questions you have or any comments you want to make about the materials or the information, or is something you wished we'd covered and we didn't, I would be happy to okay. What are you seeing, Ellie?
But I'm seeing somebody is asking, how do we maintain this mindset?
Um, Again, remember the 5-year-old being a good leader, putting it in the front of his head all day long. One of the things that, if I'm in a physical class with you, I'm going to give you a stone or a marble or something to take back with you to set on your desk to remind you to take care of yourself. Journals help. If you happen to be a writer, journals help. So if you're a person that does that, talking to other people, find a buddy. Find somebody else in your organization or somebody else that's on this webinar and, just touch base once a week and talk about it. Anything that's just going to remind you. The talisman, something on your desk is, I think, one of the best ways. One of the best ways of maintaining it. And having a buddy that's just going to, send you a text message and say, you taking care of yourself today? I mean, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this because we really don't have a ton of time in our lives. So taking care of yourself today, that's all the text message has to say. Ellie, do we have anything else?
Well, somebody just commented, I have a saying, only you can set the tone and pace of your life.
Oh, that's fabulous. I like that. I like that. Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Reasons to discern? Okay. Well, with that, I want to say thank you for your participation, for your interest in this webinar. I really do appreciate that. I would also just like to say thank you to you for what you do every single day. This is hard work. You come back at it every single day, and I think that that's incredibly inspiring. And I just want to let you know that every single morning I do say a quiet thank you for all that you do out there to change the world. Not everybody gets to go home at the end of the day and say, today I changed the world, but every day you change the world, and you need to remember that. So take care of yourselves and make it as good a day as you can, and just keep remembering to take care of you. You get stuck with the self-care thing, email me. I'm happy to send you some other materials and talk to you about it. So. Ellie, you want to close us out?
Sure thing. Okay, with that, I will just let you know, Autumn, that a couple of people said thank you and that it was great. And I also thank you for taking the time to be with us. And just so you know, Autumn, you didn't think it was going to take you 90 minutes, but it took you 85. So,
okay.
And I look forward, I know some of the people on this call are going to be at the training next week, and can look forward to seeing you there. So thanks again, and have a great day, everybody. And if you want, again, if you would like to receive some sort of certificate, you can email Michelle Peterson, and she'll get that off to you. And with that, I say goodbye, and have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks, Ellie.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.